This video focuses on how important decision intelligence is in identifying enterprise fraud for insurers. What we can see over here is that we've got a claim made by Calvin Heslin as a third party, and Augusta is my first party. Taken individually, this claim may not have triggered as part of an alert workflow. There's low-level risk around the claim value, the circumstances, maybe where it happened, but in isolation, looking at that transactionally, that won't be high enough in order for my investigator to have a look at, most likely. What we now recognize, though, is as insurers look to accelerate the claims process and improve their customers' journey, there's a number of different ways and channels that fraudsters can now exploit in order to make multiple claims. They may be able to make claims through contact centers and through online portals as well. What we can see is that we've got other individuals with varying IDs. We've got a Calvin Heslin, and he's actually the first party on this claim, whilst this individual or identity was a third party on that claim. And we've got another identity which is quite similar, which is Calvin Heslin, but with a different date of birth compared to the others. Again, Calvin here is a third party. What we know is that individuals who look to try and make claims that are fraudulent will often obfuscate their ID or synthesize their ID. They'll use varying details around their address, their name. They will use slightly different contact information, email addresses, payment information as well. Again, because we've got such variation between these identities, in our experience, this typically would bypass an insurer's matching controls, where they rely on typically record-to-record matching. Again, this traditionally would bypass tools which use narrow identifiers or just links in order to identify if these records are the same. Because in reality, there's nothing directly linking each of these claims or these individuals making these claims together. Quantexa's category-leading entity resolution has identified that Calvin Heslin is the same, and that's through iteratively matching using all available information around email addresses, variations of a name, similar dates of birth, similar addresses. Also, in real time, Quantexa has pulled in the external data as well, and has used that to further enrich Calvin's profile. What we can see is that Calvin is matched to industry claims, we can also see that Calvin has a level of financial stress identified as well through credit bureau records. Finally, we can see that Calvin is also linked to a corporate registry record, and that business has actually gone into liquidation. Quantexa is able to load all of this external data at scale because we don't rely on a fixed data model. We're able to vastly scale our platform to billions of records. This allows us to build a robust data foundation and truly understand the risk around Calvin in this instance across internal and external data. What we can further do is enrich our view of our network in real time. I can see that Calvin is associated to a corporate registry record. What's quite interesting will be to understand, well, what else is that company, or who else is that company associated to? What we can see is that this company is also associated to an individual called Alec Dale. At each stage of the investigation, or at each stage of the network expansion that's happening in real time, Quantexa is automatically looking to understand the relevance of the link as well as the accuracy of the link with the broader context of the network in mind. So not only do we have a link to Alec Dale, but what's quite interesting is that in real time I'm able to understand that there's potentially some further exposure. I can see that Alec is linked to other claims that have similar circumstances, happened in the same location, of a similar value. How likely is it that an individual is associated to another individual through a common business and they're all making the same types of claims within the same type of time frame as well? It's not likely to be a coincidence. And as an investigator, this elevates the risk presented to me. What I can also see as an investigator is any relevant links through associated entities like addresses, email addresses, bank accounts. All of this is underpinned via accurate and category-leading entity resolution as well. In this instance, I can see that These claims are actually tied together via common bank accounts, through common telephone numbers, as well as common email addresses as well. This, to me as an investigator, actually demonstrates not only is there an intent to defraud me through varying IDs that I've identified through entity resolution, but also there's a pattern of coordinated activity. There may be an individual or a set of individuals ultimately controlling what happens as part of these claims through the identification of shared entities such as email addresses, bank accounts, and phone numbers. All of this is happening in real time as well. So as soon as these claims are made, as soon as this network is generated, it's presented to me as an investigator, scored, profiled, and then put as part of a workflow if it triggers a suspicious rating. Quantexa goes beyond just transactional fraud scoring, and it truly looks to understand the view of the risk across the enterprise. Imagine if you had a provider, in this instance a law firm, that's associated to all of these claims. Going beyond that, the documentation provided as part of those claims is similar. It's used images or documents that may be fabricated or generated through AI. And equally, if the unstructured claims notes are similar as well. All of that context can be used in order to understand the profile around this particular law firm. At each stage, the strength and the relevance of the link is profiled as well. I can see that this law firm is a relatively new business, is not on my approved supplier list or my panel as an insurer, and is not actually linked to that many claims. But the claims that it is linked to, a vast proportion of them are actually associated to this network where they're a representative of the claimants that are suspicious. How likely is that to be a coincidence? It's not very likely. And as an investigator, what I'm able to do is quickly profile this business in real time and understand what additional exposure there might be as well in terms of claims or any additional exposure I might have to that supplier as an insurer. Imagine if we had the same handler that was approving or making payments out to this network. In addition, all of these payments were approved by the same person, by the same line manager, and a lot of them were done out of hours as well. All of that heightens the suspicion around this particular individual. What Quantexa is able to do is profile that against any unstructured data available as well, to include mapping information. What we can see from a mapping perspective is that this handler is actually geographically quite close to a number of the claimants. With all of that context provided, what I'm able to do is actually segment this view and provide it to the internal fraud team for further investigation, all from the same data foundation. Quantexa's robust and government-grade security framework means that each team within your organization will only have the right to see the data that they should see. All of this is underpinned via a robust framework around data security and roles-based security access. This allows fraud leaders to truly understand coordinated threats across the enterprise, looking to understand internal and external data exposure, structured and unstructured data formats in real time and in batch. This means that genuine customers aren't impacted, investigators are presented with the relevant exposure, and all of this is underpinned by category-leading entity resolution and graph network generation to ensure that as an investigator, the right risks are prioritized for me in order to investigate early on. By placing entity resolution and real-time graph generation at the heart of its platform, Quantexa allows fraud leaders to truly understand the risk across their enterprise, turning fragmented data into actionable intelligence and allowing their investigators to truly understand their exposure across their enterprise.